right, what did you guys come up with on this one? Anybody, just shout it out. 14. Okay, 14 is correct. Let's walk through it and make sure that we're all on the same page with that. So let's see here. I want to scroll up a little bit. There we go. All right, so 14. So order of operations tells me I need to look at this stuff first, right? That's my set of parentheses. Okay? So I focus on that. Okay, focus on that, and I go through my order of operations again inside just those parentheses. That's my separate kind of new problem to focus on. There's no more parentheses inside there. There's no exponents inside there. But now I get to multiply and divide. Do I have one of those operations in there? Got division, right? So I'm going to go 4 plus 2 squared. 8 divided by 2 gives me my 4, and then minus 6, right? The one thing I want to make sure that we understand, guys, is that everything else stays the same, okay? Only rewrite the thing that the operation that you are currently addressing. So now, parentheses, I do have parentheses, but there's nothing inside these, right? So there's nothing I can do, okay? It's just a singular value. That means I can't do any other operations inside them. What's the next thing I have to do then? Exponents, okay? So I've got to address this, right? So 2 squared turns into 4. Okay.
I didn't really do that. I mean, I just can't wait.
You did multiple things together at once? Yes, and that's fine. So what she's saying is that she kind of in her head knew 2 squared was 4, and it's getting stuck to that 4 through multiplication, and at the next step with that multiplication or with the problem in order of operations is to multiply. So you're kind of foreseeing what is the next step and doing it together in the same step, and that's fine. Just be careful that you don't do too many of those things at once and get messed up. Okay. So that is the multiplication that we need to do. So we're going to have 4 plus 16 minus 6. Okay. And here 4, so 4 plus 16 gives me my 20 minus 6. And that's the 14 you guys were saying, right? Okay. The one thing that and this is something that you have to fight against, is trying to do too much at once. Okay. So we want to get the answer as fast as we can, right? We want to be efficient. As we move on through the year, there's going to be some stuff that if that's your mind frame is try to get as much done at once as possible, you're going to run into some errors. Okay, so I like to, especially in class, because there's going to be people at different levels. So I want to make sure that we kind of address it. And I'm going to go through problems. And you might say, well, this is kind of boring for me because I can do it all in 2 steps, and he's showing it in 6. Well, I want to make sure that I don't do it in 2 steps and then lose half the class. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's do, I think I got 2 more, and then we'll move on to the evaluate section. Let's do, let's go. We'll go 3 plus 6. We'll divide by 3. That's 2. And then we'll add 1. All right, so as we look at this one, are there parentheses? Yeah, so I've got to focus on my parentheses. So here's the first grouping of parentheses, right? Okay? And remember what I said. Once you locate your first set of parentheses, you have to run through the order of operations again, starting back at the beginning, starting back at parentheses. Are there parentheses inside those parentheses? Yes. Okay? So we need to kind of draw our attention to right there first. Does that make sense? Okay? You're going to hear people in other math classes say that you work from your innermost set of parentheses outward. Okay? So those would be the innermost parentheses. That make sense? They're the I said yesterday, or maybe the day before, I used the word nested. Okay, so they're like a nest inside a nest, and then the 3 and the 6 are like the eggs inside a nest. Does that make sense? And we want to find where's that first grouping of eggs that we can do something with. Okay, so 3 plus 6 is going to be the problem that I focus on right away. And what am I going to change that to? 9. Okay, so that changes to 9. Everything else stays the same. So I got 4 plus 9 divided by 3. Okay, there's still parentheses around that. So I haven't dealt with the yellow grouping yet, right? And then I've got 2 here and plus 1. Okay, I still have parentheses, and this is where it's a little bit different than the parentheses that we've already been dealing with or the questions we've already dealt with, is that now, even though we've already addressed one set of parentheses, there are still parentheses that we can do operations with on the inside there, right? So inside that expression, inside of 4 plus 9 divided by 3, what needs to be done first? 9 divided by 3. So we're going to do that division first. All right? And it's going to give me 4 plus 3, right? I got my 2 and my plus 1. I got rid of one of the operations in the parentheses, but not all of them. And I can't get rid of the parentheses until I address all the operations, get rid of all the operations. So now I've got to do the 4 plus 3, right? So it gives me 7. We got my 2 here, and plus 1. Okay, so you took the 7 and the 2, because multiplication comes before addition, right? So I took those 2, multiplied them together, got my 1, and that gives us our 15. Is that okay? I want to do one more of those, which is going to be kind of a unique situation. You won't see a whole lot of these early on, but as we get into a little bit deeper into the course, some of these expressions are going to be kind of common. So 2 plus 3 plus 1 squared divided by 2. So I've got this problem where I've got that red division bar is saying I'm going to take that top expression, divide it by the bottom one, right? Okay. Yes?
Wait, can I start?
Mm-hmm.
Let's cancel out. Oh, wait, just kidding. Oh, just kidding.
So there's the question of whether we can cancel things out from the top and the bottom, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to do that right off the bat. Okay, there will be some cancellation occurring later on, okay, towards the end of the problem. But right now, let's just look at that red division bar. If we go back up to the top of your paper where it gives I think it's actually step number 1 there, where it starts talking about the parentheses and the brackets. It also says that your division bar acts as a grouping object, okay, or a grouping symbol, meaning that this here could have or should have its own set of parentheses around it. Does that make sense? And this here should have the same. Which ultimately what it does for us, or what it tells us, is that we're going to deal with the blue, we call it a numerator, we're going to deal with the blue numerator as if it was its own individual problem. So don't even worry about the stuff that's in yellow. Let's just go through the math for the stuff that's in blue. Okay? So what would I do first for the stuff that's in blue?
3 plus 1.
Okay, so we're going to have 2. We got to go to parentheses. You got to do 3 plus 1, which gives me 4. We'll square that, and then we'll divide by 2, right? So that's what that's going to simplify to. Now what do I need to go through? Still doing PEMDAS, right? Okay, so I got to do 4 times 4. I got to address the power. Okay, so it's going to turn into 2 plus 16 divided by 2, right? Now, do you do the 2 plus 16, or do you do the 16 divided by 2 first? 16 divided by 2. So it's going to give me, this 2 stays. That first 2, I didn't do anything with that. 16 divided by 2 turns into an 8. So there's where we get 10, right? So that top turns into just 10. So this blue stuff is just a weird way to give you the number 10. Okay? Now, let's do this in green. We'll do the bottom. Okay, so if I do the bottom, just like I did the top, just like its own individual problem, what's the first thing I need to do?
3 minus 1.
3 minus 1. So I'm going to rewrite because we got to do the parentheses, you got to rewrite that as 2. And it's got that exponent of 2 with it, right there. Divided by 4. Plus 2 minus 1, right? Now what do I got to do?
2 squared.
Right, we did the parentheses, so now we move on to exponents. So we'll do 2 squared, which will give me 4. This 4 stays the same, the plus 2 and the minus 1 stays the same. And now, 4 divided by 4, because when I got multiplication, division, adding, subtracting, I go left to right, multiply and divide, take precedence, right? You got to do multiplication, division first. So we're going to do that first. That gives you 1. And then plus 2 minus 1. What's that going to turn into? 2, right? So the top blue stuff turned into 10. The bottom yellow stuff turned into 2, right? And this is where we actually do our canceling. Because if I factor 10, what are 2 numbers I multiply together to give me 10?
2 and 5.
2 and 5, right? And 2 and 1 factor to give me 2, right? What's 2 divided by 2? 1, right? So that's why those cancel, and it leaves me just 5. That's why 10 divided by 2 is 5. Okay? That's fine. Are you left with 10 over 2? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I did like 2 divided by 2. 2 goes in 5. 2 goes in.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Huh?
Why are we doing all that?
Right. This is, so when you take 10 divided by 2, so you went from here, you went straight to that, right?
Yeah. Perfectly
fine.
Okay.
But this is the reason, because earlier in the beginning you said you wanted to cancel something out, right? This is the only place that we can actually start canceling. And it's because that 2 and the 2 on top and 2 on the bottom are a factor of 1. Because anything divided by itself is 1, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're really doing when we cancel. Okay, so here's my question. Here's why I don't want you to use a calculator. Now, this calculator here is a little bit different because it has what we call math print or math type on it, which when I start pushing division bars and stuff like that, it will start writing things as I've got it written on my, like I wrote it by hand. Okay, so I kind of show you this, and then I'll show you maybe a different. Let's just start with the other one. Let's see if this one here will be a little bit different. So I want to type this thing in. So this was as if you've got like one of those red calculators over there, and you just start pushing buttons. So I go 2 plus parentheses 3 plus 1. I raise that to the second power. I'll divide it by 2, right? And now I need another division bar, which will be this red one, correct? And I'll put in parentheses 3 minus 1, square that, another division for 4, plus 2 minus 1. Now, we did it by hand, and we know we follow order of operations to a T by hand and got 5, right? That gives me 7 halves. 3.5. Not the right answer, right? So what's going on there is that the calculator is programmed with us needing to use parentheses, with us needing to tell it what order of operations to go through first. So as I wrote that, and I don't know if I can get the whole thing here to show up for you. Okay, so as I wrote that, right there where my cursor is, that division bar above my cursor is that red division bar on the PowerPoint, right?
Yeah.
So what I need to be able to do is tell the calculator that I really need that there to be my numerator. Does that make sense? And I need to tell the calculator that that needs to be my denominator. Okay? Now that's still kind of questionable, kind of iffy, but it is the correct way then of getting that result of 5 back. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Where and I get this all the time. I get this with 12th graders. When I teach at Rhodes at night, and I get this with college students, that they will just grab the calculator and they will start typing things the way they see it written in the textbook or written in their homework, whatever, and it spits back a number, and they go, well, it got a number back, so that must be the answer. Okay? Well, if you don't know what the answer is supposed to look like, how can you judge or how can you argue that the calculator is right? Does that make sense? Okay? I told the last class a couple of years ago, I think it was last year, Mr. Shine. You guys have Mr. Shine?
Wait.
Do you know who he is?
Miss Shine?
You had Mr. Shine? I did too. That's crazy, isn't it? She was your kindergarten teacher. She was my kindergarten teacher. She was actually my first grade teacher.
Who's that?
That guy down there, the tall guy, the gray hair.
Oh.
Have you seen him? That's Mrs. Shine's husband.
Oh.
So last year he told his students, he teaches history. He told his students that we bombed Nagasaki and Hiroshima with atomic bombs, right? Nuclear bombs. And then he said that's how Godzilla was made. And they believed him that Godzilla was a real thing, and it was because of World War II and our bombing. And they believed him because they didn't know any better. Does that make sense? When you take your calculator, you start typing things in, you get a result. You don't know any better, especially if you don't know how your calculator works. You don't know any better whether that answer is right or wrong. But if we understand our order of operations, and we do it by hand, and we follow order of operations exactly, then there's no question whether we're right or wrong. We know we're going to be right. Does that make sense? Okay. I think it takes time. It takes a lot of experience using these calculators to get them to do what we want them to do. Okay. So I'm going to ask you to kind of avoid them initially. Okay. Now, if you need like 98 divided by 12, if you need to do that on a calculator, by all means do it. Okay. But don't use a calculator to do the entire problem because you're going to miss out a lot of things. Let's jump down to the bottom where it starts to talk about evaluating. Okay. Do I have that sentence already written in there for you? It should be on the top of the second page. So it says evaluate. The key word in evaluate, the root word for evaluate is value. Okay? Value refers to a numerical amount, right? Like 12 is a value, 30 is a value, 5 that we just got was a value, right? Okay? So whenever they give you the phrase evaluate, they're saying you're going to have an algebraic expression. You're going to have a combination of numbers and variables, but they're going to tell you what those variables are supposed to be. So if I've got x's and y's, they might tell you x has to be 5 and y has to be 2. So everywhere you see an x, you're going to replace it with a 5. Wherever you see a y, you're going to replace it with a 2, and then you're going to go through the simplification process that we just did. Okay? So that's kind of what that's saying up there. Okay? Replacing variables within an algebraic expression with given numbers. So given numbers means that they've told you, like right here, that x is 5 and y is 2. I'm giving that to you. Okay? And it says then simplify and develop numerical expression to create a single value. That's where we get evaluate, and using our order of operations to do that. Okay? So I'm going to, that first one there was 2x plus 3y. 2x plus 3y. So let's do that one. I'm kind of a stickler for trying to get you guys to learn those words like simplify or evaluate. Because when I was your age and I was in these seats, I didn't pay attention to that stuff. And when I got the directions and I got the tests and quizzes, and there were one-word directions that said simplify, one-word directions that say evaluate, I had a little bit of ballpark idea of what to do, okay, but I wasn't confident in my work because I couldn't read the directions and understand the directions correctly. So that's why we talk about those things, to make sure that we understand what we're looking for here in regards to an answer. So I think I said x is 5, and I want you to say y is 2. Okay? X is 5, y is 2. So those are the given values. Okay? And we're going to, everywhere I see an x, you're going to replace it with 5. Everywhere you see a y, you're going to replace it with 2, and nothing else changes. Nothing else changes. So, yes. Yeah.
2, and then put in parentheses 5, and then plus 3, and put in parentheses 8.
Good. So that's all that is, right? We took x and replaced it with what it was equal to. Took out y, replaced it with what it's equal to, right? Yeah. Okay. That's called substitution. All right. If I have a substitute in here, I've been removed and replaced with somebody that's supposed to be able to do my job, right? If you are in a sport, you play football, basketball, baseball, softball, volleyball, whatever, you get tired, coach takes you out, puts somebody in that's supposed to be as good as you, right? So they take you out and replace you with somebody who has equal ability, okay? So that's substituting, okay? We're replacing something with its equal, all right? So now this generates a pure numerical expression, just like the examples we were doing. So now I've got to go through PIMDAS. So what's the first thing I got to do here?
2 times 5, or either one.
Okay, so either one. So we're going to do 2 times 5 because you left to right following that technique.
Yeah.
And then I can rewrite this as 3 times 2, right? So go through order of operations. What you're saying, though, is that you know that I can do the 2 times 5, and then because I'm going to rewrite it this way, I got to make that 6, right? So you're just doing them both at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine, okay? So I'm going to break that down. 2 times 5 gives me 10. 3 times 2 gives me a 6. So then I get 16, okay? Now, that value, that expression, is only going to evaluate for 16 when I use 5 and 2. If I were to say x is 10 and y is 13, that thing would evaluate at a completely different number, right? A much bigger one, yes. Okay. Let's do another one. Let's go. All right, so let's do 2 x plus y squared divided by 14. Let's just keep the same x and y values. X equals 5, y equals 2. Guys, at any time, if I write too small, for those of you that sit in the back, let me know. Don't be afraid to interrupt class. Say, hey, I can't read that, can't see that, those types of things. Let me know. Okay, so first thing you're going to do, we're going to evaluate this. X is 5, so we'll come over here, wherever I see an X, replace it with 5. Y is 2, come over here, wherever I see a Y, replace it with 2, right? So I'm going to have 2, and it'll be 5 plus 2, be squared then, and then divided by 14. What do I have to do first? Five plus 2. So it's going to be 2, and then 7 there. Keep the squared, divide by 14. So we did parentheses. Now I get to exponents, right? So what does this exponent go to? Just the 7. So I'm going to go 2. 7 squared is 49. That's fine. And then divide by 14, right? Now, in order of operations, what do I have to do next? 2.
49 times.
49 times 2. What's that?
I don't know. I didn't do that. Wait.
98. Good. Okay. Now.
Oh, I'm wrong.
Now, eventually, my hope is that you guys start to be able to do this mental math. Now, 49 times 2, that's a weird 49, I think it's a weird number to multiply by anything, but it's almost 50, isn't it? So in my mind, I always multiply 50 times 2, and that gives me 100, right? That's easy to do. But 49 was one less than I needed, correct? So that means I multiplied an amount of 2 one too many times, so I subtract that out and I get my 98, okay? Now 98 divided by 14, do we know what that is? Good, awesome. So we're looking for 7 to be that final solution.
I got it wrong because I just distributed it.
I did 7 plus 7.
Okay, and that's actually one of the most common errors that people, when they see 7 squared, they want to make it 7 plus 7 to make sure we multiply. And you said you distributed?
The 2 to the 5 and the 2.
Okay. Well, what this really means is this side. So remember that power 2 goes to the thing that's directly behind, right? So it's directly behind the 5 plus 2. So it really means this. Does that make sense? So now if I was going to distribute, it's okay if you distribute, or it should be okay if I distribute here. So let's try this. Let's go.
Oh, right. That's
So if I go 2 times 5 would be 10. 2 times 10 would be, 2 times 2 would be 4. And this is going to be 7 divided by so this is 14. Think about this, 14 times 7 divided by 14. That's going to give me 7 again, okay? But understand, you can't distribute that there until you deal with the exponent, because distributed is multiplication, right? Distributed is just a fancy word for multiplying 2 or 3 or 4 times, okay? So whenever you hear the word distribute, all we're doing is the operation multiplication. Exponents have to be done before that, right? Order of operations, E comes before M, so I need to address that exponent before I distribute, if that's the route you're going to go. I've got an assignment. I'm going to post it on Math Excel 1.2. Plan on it being due tomorrow. Similar questions to what we've seen here. So the hope is that our in-class examples and stuff like that are equivalent to or more difficult than what you see in your homework, okay? So that when you get to the homework, you can use your notes to help you move through that if you need to. On Math Excel, yes.